Okay, so today we're doing something a little bit different. I am taking your original questions, but I am changing the numbers to them. So you have to take these numbers, these notes, understand them in order to apply it to the practice sheet that you have in your foldable, meaning apply these exact strategies to new numbers. Okay, first identify which one you are solving for, in which case I need to solve for the x. The corresponding side would then be the 6. So I'm going to go ahead and circle those. Now I find another set. Well, this is the only one on the smaller triangle, and the corresponding side on the larger triangle is this one. So I can't use the 18 at all. So we'll go ahead and set up the proportion where it is circles over squares. So circles will be my x over my 10, and it has to be the 10 below it and not the 4 because it's the larger triangle. Now when it comes to the smaller triangle, we have a 6 for the circle and a 4 for the square. And you can cross multiply and solve or simplify. I'm going to go ahead and do what y'all like, which is cross multiply. Get the 60. Divide by 4, divide by 4, x equals, and you go off to the side if you need to. Calculate it, 1 and 5. So your answer is 15. Now you check to see if it's reasonable, and the 15 would go right here. First step, let's separate the triangles. So we're going to go ahead and dry them out. The larger one, and then the smaller one. And we could go ahead and label those that we know. This is an X. Now what you need to recognize is this whole thing, these arrows, means this whole side is 20. This piece, this 15, is just from here to here. So I don't use the 15. If we do use the 15, it's 15 plus the 5 right here, which gets you the total of 20. So this is an isosceles triangle. So we're going to go ahead and label 20 over here. And then we're looking at the smaller one, and the smaller one is going to be the 4 and just this piece of 5. So now let's set up our proportion for that. To do it, we could just cut them in half there, which is circle, square, circle, square. So we have our proportion, which is just x over 20 equals 4 over 5. Now scale factor right there is times 4 times 4, just 4 times the side lengths, so your x equals 16, and that is 16 meters. So think about it, and you think this x is 16 a reasonable answer. You say, okay, well this side has to be smaller than these other sides. So 16 is smaller than 20. It is a reasonable answer. Okay, on this one, you are going to go ahead and draw your picture since they did not provide them. It says 4 inches wide and 6 inches high. So when I draw it, I'm taking that into consideration and do 4 inches wide, and my height needs to be a little bit bigger of the 6 inches. So I'm going to label 4 for my wide and 6 for my height. Now the second one is going to be a little bit bigger, obviously, because it says 8 feet wide. So that means this wide needs to be a little bit larger, and of course that means the height is going to be a little bit larger than 2. So let's go ahead and label it wide equals 5. And they said, what will t be, the height? So let's label that a t for height. Now it says set up the proportion and solve. So we can make our little lines here, and that would be height over width. So 6 over 4 equals t over 5. Now don't flip anything. The what has to be catty corner from your T has to be the 4. Those have to be crisscross or you've set it up incorrectly. So make sure those are crisscross from each other, and the 6 and the 5 are crisscross from each other. And that's how you check your proportion. Now to go ahead and figure that out, you could cross multiply. There is no scale factor. So that is 4t equals 6 times 5, which is 30. Write this step. It is a must. Write that divide by 4 2 times on both sides. Now you go off and you could do 30 divided by 4. And I know that goes in there 7 times for 28. My remainder is 2. So add that decimal in and go ahead and add a 0. And that is a 5. Goes in there 5 times for remainder is 0. So your final answer, T equals 7.5. And this one is feet. Put that units on there because this says 5 feet. So that means this one is going to be feet. Well, these two are labeled as inches. It's fine. You just have to make sure that if this is labeled as feet, that is labeled as feet also. Okay, first let's identify our corresponding sides. First, we're going to go with our largest side. My largest side is what I am looking for. So I'm putting a circle here and a circle there because those are the corresponding. They're the largest side on both items. Then we have our medium side. This is our medium side, so I'm going to use a square for those. And then we have our smallest side, and I'm going to put a star next to those. Now look, okay, I only need 2 sets. I do have to have the circles. The circles are a must because those are what that is what I'm looking for. So if I start with this side would be a 10, and the larger would be a Y. Now, the other one I'm looking at is the second set. Now, do I want to use the 6 or the 8? Well, 6 or 8 are fine with me. The one I don't want to do is 10.5. So I'm going to leave my stars out and go ahead and do the triangles instead. So I'm going to use the triangles, and that would be over triangles. The first set, the smaller one, would be at 8, while the larger one is a 14. Now you have to be careful and make sure they line up. So my 2 smaller ones are 10 over 8, that's good, and my large ones are Y over 14, so circles over the squares. Now to solve, we can do our standard, whatever you want to do to approach this. I am looking at the scale factor right now, and there is no scale factor from 8 to 14. Now I could simplify it and get 5 fourths, but when I think about a 4 doesn't go into the 14 either, so it's not really going to help. So I'm going to do cross multiply. So set it up, 8y, and that's 14 times 10. Now in the second line, I know 14 times 10 is just 14 with a 0 added to it. So show that one-step equation of divide by the 8. So now I could go off and start doing my division. Divide by 8, I know it goes in there 1 time. Remainder 6, go in there 7 times for 56, and remainder's 4. Well, I can't stop because I have remainder 4. So add that decimal and add that 0, and it goes in there 5 times. And now I have remainder of 0. So y equals 17.5. Now I need to go up and look at my units, and I know this is all done in inches. So 17.5 inches. Now I'm checking for reasonableness. The one I was looking for was the largest one. So I had small, medium, and large. And 17.5 is larger than both of those. So it is reasonable. All right, I got 2 poles with 2 shadows. And obviously they're not going to be rotated, so it's perfect. The only problem is it's not labeling it. So let's read the problem and see what it's asking for. Okay, it is 18 foot, one of them is 18 foot tall and casts a shadow of 12. what is the length of the shadow of the nearby 30-foot tall pole? Okay, so we got two poles, and obviously this one's the bigger one, so I'm going to label the 30 over here. This is a smaller one, so that's going to be the 18 and 12. So I'm going to label 18 and the 12. What is the length of the shadow? So this is what I'm looking for. My length of this shadow is of a nearby 30-foot pole. So it already told me. I'm just looking for that shadow length. So easy peasy. I could draw those lines in between, and I could have pole over shadow. Yes, you need the label. And that's 30-foot pole is what length compared to 18-foot pole, which is a 12-foot shadow. So we have it set up. Now we just solve it. Now, as always, I'm checking for scale factor first, and 18 times nothing will jump into 30. Now I could simplify, and I know 6 goes into both, and that would get me 2 over 3. So I can simplify. If you do simplify, I'm telling you it will be divide by 6, you get 3. Divide by 6, you get 2. So that means I have 30 over L equals 3 over 2. And that's pretty obvious what your scale factor is. That's just times 10. So that one is times 10. So L equals 20. Now we need to identify 20 what? And everything is in feet. So it's 20 feet for that shadow. All right, let's read it. This is a triangle, so I need to draw triangles with side lengths 5, 12, and 13 to a similar triangle whose longest side is 65. So the longest side of 5, 12, and 13 is the 13. And it's saying the longest side of the larger one is a 65. But this is where the trick is. It's asking for the perimeter of the larger one. Well, if you remember, the perimeter says adding up all the sides. So I can't find it until I have those other two sides. So let's figure this out and draw out the triangles first. So the first one, I'm going to get 5, 12, and 13. And I'm going to label easy 5, 12, and 13. Now the other one obviously is a lot bigger. It says the longest side is a 65. Okay, I do want them trying to be the same shape. So when you draw it out, please try and do the same exact shape, just larger. Okay, so let's label and get 65 here. Now I need to find both sides because by definition the question is asking what is the perimeter of this? Well, I only have one side and I have to add up all three sides in order to get perimeter. So that means I have to find not one side but two sides. So let's start off looking for the smaller side. So let's go ahead and set that up where we have circle, square, circle, square. So circle over square, 5 over 13 for the smaller one is equal to x over 65 for the larger one. Now I happen to know that 65 divided by 5 will get you 13. So to solve it, your scale factor is just times 5. Hopefully you could recognize that as times 5. So x equals 25. So now I have this side of 25. Now I still have to solve for that other side. So we're not done yet. So the other side is this one. I'm going to label it as a y. And I will do a star and a star. So I'm going to do stars over, and let's go with what we already had in case we made mistakes on the circles and use our squares. So on the smaller one, that would be 12 for my star and 13 for my square. On the larger triangle, That would be y for my star and 65 for the square. Again, it is a scale factor of 5. So that's easy. Times 5 times 5. So everything, in other words, is just times 5. 5 times the size. So 12 times 5 will get you 60. So y equals 60. So we'll label this one 60. Now you're not done because you still have to add them up for your final answer, because the question is, what is the perimeter? So let's go ahead and add these up. 65 plus the 25 for the smaller side plus the 60 for the medium side. And when you add it, you get 150. That would be 150, and this is all done in inches. 150 inches is your final answer.